Hi, everybody. My name is John Tui, and my article today was called Normalizing Anxiety on Social Media Increases Self-Diagnosis, the Mediating Effect of Identification, but Not Stigma. This research was done by Farah Hassan, Melissa Foster, and Hyun-Yi Cho from Ohio State University. So before we get into the research problem, I'm just going to give you a little background. Normalizing mental health disorders has been a recent focus in society. However, bringing attention to mental health disorders could be positive or negative. Positively, bringing attention to mental health disorders improves awareness of that disorder. One study on medical students found that increasing awareness led to an increase in seeking help for the mental health condition. Also, when these stories are shared, it removes the isolation effect that goes along with these conditions. However, an increase in awareness could lead to an overdiagnosis of mental health disorders. The researchers cite the condition cyberchondria, a condition in which frequent internet use results in excessive health concerns. I mean, we all use the internet nowadays in excessive rates. We also all go on social media. Social media is an internet outlet for people to share whatever they want, and sometimes that content is related to mental health disorders and mental health information. So the researchers in this design focused on anxiety. At baseline, for the average person, feelings of anxiety are normal. To take that a step further, anxiety disorder is defined as excessive or intense fear and leads to sudden onsets of panic attacks that leads to difficulties with daily tasks. So basically, that baseline level of anxiety that normal people feel is debilitating for people with anxiety disorder and leads to them not being able to do the daily activities that they need to do. This is especially important for young people in university who often report increased levels of anxiety and stress. The problem is normative messages on social media may cause viewers to identify with the content creator more strongly and rate their own anxiety as a disorder, miscategorizing their anxiety. So we mentioned normalizing a little bit. Normalization is defined as deliberate social action that makes a topic routine in already existing structures of social life. So normalization gives the sense that anxiety disorders would be both common and socially acceptable to talk about in everyday life. And I think society nowadays has started to shift this way, especially in the music industry with songs' openness about their mental health struggles. The effects of a normalized message versus a non-normalized message must be different, especially with the language that is used in a normalized message. Now, in order to examine that, they had a main goal of examining the potential role of normalizing messages in identification and deceptive norms about anxiety and whether social media posts which normalize anxiety increase the likelihood of self-diagnosis of anxiety disorder. They had a couple hypotheses that led them to this main goal. The first was participants who see normalizing posts will be more likely to rate anxiety disorder as more common. The second hypothesis was participants who see normalizing posts will be more likely to report higher levels of self-reported stress and self-diagnosis of anxiety. The third hypothesis was identification will mediate effects of normalizing posts on self-reported anxiety and self-diagnosis. In this study, identification is basically the relatability of the content creator to be more connected to the viewer. They hypothesized that more identification or connectedness to the creator will mitigate the effects of self-diagnosis and self-reported anxiety. Like the fourth hypothesis was liking will mediate effects of normalizing posts on self-reported anxiety and self-diagnosis. This is the same idea with liking the social media content. They hypothesized that an increase in likes signifies an increase in identification and connectedness, which will again mitigate the self-diagnoses and self-reported anxiety. So to answer that question, they created this research study with these methods. The design of the study was to have two message categories, two messages in an experimental design. So the first message category is anxiety normalized, and there's a not normalized. Each participant was exposed to one of the 12 message stimuli. Of the participants, 654 college-age participants were used in the study. 69% were female, and 65% were white. The procedures for the research study was the participants were asked about their general social media use, and they were shown one of the social media posts for 30 seconds. The message stimuli, as we talked a little bit about earlier, was one message was anxiety normalized, and the other one was an anxiety not normalized frame. So the anxiety normalized message went like this. I wanted to share something personal with you guys today. I have anxiety, which in simple terms means I worry over things I shouldn't. Anxiety can be manageable and it's possible to overcome it. I know that having anxiety is normal, so many people out there have anxiety, and I am one of them. If you experience anxiety too, please learn more at the website linked in my bio with the following hashtags: anxiety is normal, normalize anxiety, and talk to a friend. To me, this message seemed a little more personal and about their experiences with a more positive outlook on the disease. The anxiety not normalized message went like this. I wanted to share something personal with you guys today. I've been diagnosed with generalized anxiety, which is a serious mental health disorder. Anxiety can be manageable and it's possible to overcome it, but I know the anxiety I feel is beyond what most people experience. It is a serious mental health disorder. If you experience anxiety too, please learn more at the website linked to my bio with the following hashtags: anxiety is a disorder, anxiety disorder awareness, and talk to a doctor. To me, this message was a little more medically focused and used the word disorder a couple times. In order to measure the effects of the messages, they had a couple measures. So for the cognitive measure, this was basically an open response, and they said write any thoughts and feelings had after viewing the message. Again, this was a free response without many guidelines, which led to a more open and honest response. For the norms measures, they had questions to get a sense on their perception on anxiety disorder as a whole in the United States and their university. Personal stress measures had items such as my anxiety levels are higher than most of my friends or most college students. So kind of getting their individual perception of stress. And then we had measures on self-reported anxiety. So this was a Likert scale with questions about their anxiety, such as feelings of being frightened, restless, and other feelings of anxiety. Self-diagnosis, it asked whether they have a present anxiety disorder or if they will have one in the future. So based on this study, and they compared the normalized anxiety post group to the non-anxiety or the non-normalized anxiety post group. Those who saw the normalized anxiety post considered anxiety to be more common. This is answering the question about the perceptions of anxiety, it being more common in their university and in the United States. Those who saw the normalized anxiety post were more likely to like the post. So that goes back to kind of that identification and liking concepts. Those who saw the normalized anxiety post were more likely to mention normalization on the cognitive section, and they found that normalization leads to increased self-reported anxiety and self-diagnosis. And lastly, those who saw the normalized anxiety post were more likely to classify themselves with anxiety disorders, but did not report higher levels of anxiety. I think this one was the biggest one for me because their levels of anxiety and perception of their levels of anxiety did not change, but the classification of anxiety disorder that they gave themselves was more prevalent in the normalized anxiety post. And that was something I found interesting. So just to discuss these findings a little bit, people who view normalized anxiety social media posts are more likely to consider themselves having an anxiety disorder. So the viewer was more likely to identify with the person and like the post, which in turn resulted in self-diagnosed anxiety. I feel like this study is incredibly important to health professionals and our class. They kind of overlap each other in many ways. And it's important for mental health professionals in particular to keep in mind when treating younger people with anxiety. Although normalization is a well-intended effort and a normalized message is again well-intended, it could result in negative consequences such as increased self-reported anxiety and self-diagnosis of anxiety. So the idea of those messages were not to invoke those feelings. However, that in this study, that's what they found. To me, again, like I said earlier, this is important for all health professionals and our class as a whole to consider their audience and health message to the public. I mean, normalizing mental health disorders and anxiety disorders are very well intended, and are supposed to make the individual feel, more belonging and incorporated into society, and to create a more open and honest discussion about it. However, the normalizing can lead to negative consequences, which stresses the importance of a carefully curated health message. So with these things in mind, we can move forward. The top reference for the article that this was presented on, and the bottom one was about the doctors or the medical professionals who sought mental health services after being educated on mental health. Thank you. Have a good one.